Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're the place you come to really get under the surface of big topics and get those insights you need. Today, we're getting into something I think many of us can relate to on some level, the black sheep in the family. But this isn't just about, arguments over dinner. We're going much deeper. We're looking at how family stories, the narratives we build, shape lives in really profound ways. And we'll even explore the sort of spiritual, maybe even cosmic, side effects these narratives can have on, well, the whole family system. Our main source for this is a really interesting work called Black Sheep and the Parenting of Fear, Rewriting of the Family Narrative. It offers a pretty different take on this whole experience, kind of challenges how we usually think about these roles. So our mission today is really to unpack how these narratives, especially the ones driven by fear, don't just impact one person. No, they affect the whole family dynamic. And we want to explore what the source suggests are the surprising spiritual fallout, the cosmic consequences. Get ready, because some of this might change how you see the black sheep. Maybe they're actually key to healing. For everyone. Okay, so let's unpack this. The text kicks off with a really powerful quote, actually, from Henry Kissinger. He said, "The ability to create and sustain a narrative is the most important skill a country or government can have. It allows you to shape the public's perception, which in turn shapes their actions." Now, you might be thinking, geopolitics, how does that relate to Aunt Mildred or rebellious cousin Jack? But the source makes this immediate jump. It says families, just like nations, craft these really strong narratives, meticulously even. And these stories, they often get really focused on the people who don't quite fit the mold. The black sheep, the gas is the rebel, the outsider, sometimes just the problem.
Exactly. And that narrative, which the text argues often comes from a place of fear, it genuinely starts to shape that person's path, their destiny almost. What the author's getting at is that parents, maybe even the wider community, they impose these fear-based stories. And doing that, well, it kind of limits the individual's potential, their freedom to grow authentically. It's like the family's own unresolved stuff gets projected onto them. And here's the key part. The source argues this isn't just a personal problem for the black sheep. It suggests there are much deeper spiritual consequences. Consequences for the family, even society, when they impose these kinds of restrictive, judgmental, alienating stories. When any group really operates from that fear and division, it's not just having the person directly involved. The text suggests they're risking a kind of negative universal blowback. What's particularly compelling here, I think, is this concept that text brings up called cosmic karma. You could sort of picture it as a universal law, like cause and effect, but for everything, actions, thoughts, intentions, like a universal accountability system. So when these controlling narratives suppress what the source calls someone's divine potential, the ripple effects, they don't just stop. The author claims they echo through time, impacting the person, sure, but also the family, maybe even the broader community.
Wow. And the text gives some, frankly, quite harsh examples to make this point, doesn't it? It mentions societies where children, maybe especially girls, might be ostracized or even worse, killed, for honor or because they're seen as an embarrassment. The author is really clear that these kinds of extreme acts aren't just awful tragedies. They see them as direct violations of, divine laws is the term used. And that violation creates this deep cosmic imbalance. It's a heavy idea, but it shows how seriously the source takes these narrative choices.
It is heavy, and it really flips the script on how we usually see the black sheep, right? Not as the one causing destruction, but maybe, as the text suggests, they're actually the vessel the family needs to face its own unhealed stuff, its wounds. So when families or groups choose punishment, judgment instead of compassion, they're essentially pushing against these, let's call them universal principles. And the author is quite firm. This leads to significant cosmic consequences bottom line. And this idea, it stretches further. It even includes, say, family members who actively encourage cutting ties, maybe urging a spouse to leave, or parents telling siblings to shun someone. That choice, according to the text, just keeps the cycle of suffering going. It generates negative karma that impacts the whole family, not just the one being pushed out.
Okay, this brings us to a really interesting part of the deep dive. The source pulls in a kind of spiritual roadmap from the Bible, specifically Proverbs 6.1619. This passage lists 7 things that God hates. And the source draws a direct line between these ancient ideas and the kinds of actions families might take out of fear or ego, especially towards a black sheep. Yeah, the verses list them out. Haughty eyes, a lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked schemes, feet that are quick to rush into evil, a false witness who pours out lies, and finally, a person who stirs up conflict in the community.
Right. And if you look at how the author maps this onto the family situation, it's quite revealing. Haughty eyes. That's linked pretty directly to the pride involved in judging someone who's different, that feeling of superiority. A lying tongue, well, that's about creating false stories, spreading rumors, twisting someone's character to fit the negative narrative. Hands that shed innocent blood. The text suggests this isn't always literal. It can be metaphorical, representing the emotional or, spiritual violence done by forcing someone to conform, crushing their true self. A heart that devises wicked schemes. This is seen in those controlling behaviors. Trying to manipulate someone's life path, their spiritual journey, maybe out of fear of where it might lead. Feet that are quick to rush into evil. Think about those hasty decisions, often based purely on fear or anger, that end up causing division and real harm. A false witness that speaks very clearly to those unfair narratives, the stories told about the black sheep that just aren't true or are heavily distorted. And that last one, a person who stirs up conflict, that really embodies anyone who actively fuels separation and prevents healing or understanding within the family. And the author's message is really stark here. When these principles, these laws are broken, whether it's through outright rejection, subtle manipulation, or just emotional neglect, that cosmic karma, as they call it, it inevitably comes back around. It doesn't just hit the black sheep. It impacts those who chose fear, who perpetuated the judgment, who acted against love.
So, okay, after outlining these pretty serious potential consequences, the deep dives does shift. It moves towards solutions, towards hope, really. It draws on wisdom from a spiritual tradition mentioned in the text called the Sacred Atlantean Brotherhood, offering a way forward.
Yeah, and central to their teachings, at least as presented in this book, is this core idea. Fear is the root cause of all suffering. It's fundamental. They apparently have this practice or level called the degree of illuminated light, degree 4. And it's essentially about learning how to consciously shed fear, to embrace your own inner light, for real transformation. And crucially, the author argues this isn't just an individual path. Families can apply this too. They also introduce something called the anchor. It's described as a tool, maybe a set of principles or a practice from what they call their navigator degree. You can think of the anchor as a way to consciously ground yourself and the family in positive qualities: love, compassion, wisdom, understanding. Especially when you're facing pressure from outside, judgments, expectations, the core idea is that if families actively choose love and support instead of judgment and rejection, well, they create what the author calls positive karma. They actually break free from that cycle of fear that causes so much separation.
There's a powerful quote included from someone named Grandmaster Waxira associated with this brotherhood. It says, "In every act of defiance, there lies the seed of rebirth." That really changes the perspective, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. It reframes the whole idea of the black sheep's defiance. It's not just rebellion for rebellion's sake. It's seen as a necessary disruption, like a wake-up call for the family, a prompt to face its own shadows, its fears, and to actively rewrite that old story of division. And by choosing to see it that way, to engage with that disruption, the family can actually achieve a kind of spiritual rebirth, which involves shedding that toxic karma, that negative baggage from the past, and stepping onto a new path based on unity and, well, compassion.
So wrapping this all together, what does this mean for us, thinking about our own lives, our own families or communities? The big takeaway seems to be that the black sheep isn't the villain of the story. Not at all. Instead, the author positions them as a potential spiritual catalyst, someone challenging the old ways, the outdated narratives that aren't really serving anyone anymore.
Precisely. And the text does offer some practical ideas, steps families could take to consciously create a new, healthier narrative. First, it's about acknowledging the fears. What was driving that old story in the first place? Getting honest about that. Then it's about cultivating real empathy, trying to understand the black sheep's role, maybe seeing how they are part of the family's growth, even if it's uncomfortable. The really big shift is moving from judgment to actual support, embracing the differences, maybe even celebrating what makes that person unique. Families can consciously choose to anchor themselves in love and understanding, maybe using tools like that anchor concept or something similar to navigate the inevitable bumps in the road. And finally, the text really emphasizes healing those wounds of separation. That takes open communication, real compassion, mutual respect. It's work, no doubt. But this new narrative, the author argues, is one that values every single member, especially those who push the boundaries, seeing them not as problems, but as well as vital agents for spiritual change.
So in conclusion, this deep dive really offers a profound shift in perspective. The black sheep, far from being the problem. The source suggests they might actually be the solution, or at least a key part of it. The agents of change needed to help families face their fears, let go of old, limiting stories, and maybe wake up to something higher, together.
And that closing thought from Grandmaster Waxira really resonates. In the presence of love, fear cannot survive. It's simple but powerful. So perhaps the final thought for you, our listener, to really chew on is this. If family healing is the goal, then that fear-based story has to go, and the black sheep. Maybe embracing them, truly understanding their role, is the most crucial step towards a more enlightened future for everyone involved.